Hey everybody! In this tutorial, we're going to be continuing our series of building a responsive website from scratch using a Front-End Mentor website template. In this video, we're going to build out the hero section, and we're going to get that background image just right on mobile, tablet, and desktop. Now, if you haven't seen any of the other videos yet, you can watch the first one up here. Also, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so that you can find out when the next video comes out. Sound good? Let's get into it. Alright, now before we start any coding, of course we want to look back at the design and just have an idea of where we're going with this and how we want things to look on mobile and desktop. So looking at the design, the hero section on mobile is stacked to one column with the image on top and then the copy and button below that. Then on desktop we have two columns instead of one column with the text on the left and then the image on the right. You might also notice that the images on the hero are slightly different between mobile and desktop. So let's look at our files and see how that is going to be set up. I have opened here my project folder with all the website files, and I already had saved all the images from Front-End Mentor in this images subfolder. So my guess is the background intro desktop is going to be this one. Yep, and then we got one for mobile. This is just that designed background. We need to look for the images of the phones. Probably going to be this image mockups here. But what this is a PNG with a transparent background, and we can overlay that same image of the phones over the mobile background for mobile and then the desktop background. Going back to the design one more time, we can probably use the same markup for both mobile and desktop, and then we'll use styles to differentiate the styles between mobile and desktop as well. So let's get started. Going into our code editor, VS Code, and we're going to add markup for our hero section. So I'm going to create a section tag, and I'm going to call it class of hero __ just hero actually. Then in the hero section tag, we'll add a div of class. Let's start with the image. So hero __ image. And under that, we'll do div class hero __ we'll just say text. Up in the hero image is going to be the image with the phones and then the background, and then the hero text is going to be under that. And I'm doing it this way because on mobile we have the image first and then the copy. So then we can just change the style so that the image is going to be on the right for desktop. So now let's go into our files from Front-End Mentor, and we want to copy over the text that they gave us so we don't have to like type it out manually. When you download the files from Front-End Mentor, they give you an index.html file with all the text already there. So I'm just going to copy and paste that over. So hero title is Next Generation Digital Banking. Now we need to figure out what HTML tag we want to use. So usually on a website, the H1 tag is going to be the name of the page. But I've also seen it where for a home page, you use an H1 tag for the hero title. And then Why Choose Easy Bank would be H2, latest articles would be H2, and so on. And then we would do H3 tags for these little subtitles here for each section. So yeah, I think I'm going to do Next Generation Digital Banking is going to be the H1 tag. We'll do that, H1, and it doesn't need a class since there's just going to be one of these. Then we'll copy over this text. Sorry, this goes in the text hero section. There we go. And then I'm also going to add the button. And let's kind of look back and see what I had done before for like this request invite button up in the header. Just look for request invite. There we go. So I did an anchor tag with this button class and then a header CTA class. So let's do the same thing here. We'll just use an anchor tag, and let's say it's an anchor link. We'll just do a pound, and we'll give it a class of hero CTA, but we also need a class of button, so it takes all those button styles that we had built in the previous videos. Request invite is the text in that button, so let's do that. And I think I'm forgetting there's some subtitle stuff here. This is an H1. I think because this is longer, it's not really a subtitle. I'm just going to put it in a paragraph tag. And I don't think I need to put a class on that because we can just use the hero text paragraph tag selector. So let's just do that. Copy this text over. There we go. Oh wait, I had already copied this. So I actually don't need this file open anymore. Okay, so I will just delete this since we don't need it anymore. Okay. So now if we look at our site, you can see that we have the button styles have already gotten ported over, which is great. And then the next thing we want to do is we want to figure out how we want to code the hero image. What I think I want to do is I'm going to create a div, and we also need to keep in mind that on desktop you can see this phone image on the right kind of overhangs the section because the next section has this really light gray background. My guess is that this phone image is going to need to be absolutely positioned You can sort of guess something needs to be absolutely positioned if it's like on top of something else. So because the phone image is on top of the next section, sort of overhanging it a little bit, we can guess that this needs to be absolutely positioned. There's a couple ways you could do this. You could create a separate div just for the images, which, obviously I have the hero image div. You could also use maybe pseudo elements and then have that absolutely positioned. So what I think I'm going to do is in the hero image itself is where I'm going to put the background image, that SVG sort of designed background. And then maybe I'll store the phone images in a pseudo class or pseudo element, like before pseudo element. So let's try that. So in that case, we actually don't need to add any more markup to the hero image because everything's going to be added in the styles. Let's move on to adding our styles. So in our app folder, I just need to make sure that I'm writing the styles in the correct place. And since this hero section is a new section and it kind of is by itself, let's create a new Sass file. So create new file. We'll call this hero.scss. And of course we need to add the file, importing it into our main Sass file. So we can just close that for now. And then in the hero section, just move it over to the right side so we can sort of see our markup and our styles at the same time. We'll add a selector of hero. Then I'm just going to add the ampersand __ image, ampersand __ text. So let's start with the mobile styles first. So in the hero image selector, I want to say background image URL, and we're going to load that. So in the images folder, we want to load the background intro mobile. Now we also want to add some other background style rules. So background size, we're going to say cover. I do that so that you kind of keep the correct aspect ratio of the image and it doesn't, stretch it or whatever, but also it'll fill the space. Then background repeat, no repeat because we don't want it to repeat. And then just for good measure, I usually do background position. We'll just do center. So it is centered in the div. Now let's see what that looks like in our browser. Okay, it doesn't look like anything. And the reason for that is probably because there is no actual content in the hero image tag. So you can see that there are the styles there, the background image is showing up, but because there's no height, it is not going to show up at all. So what we need to do is figure out how tall we want this div to be, and we'll sort of add that in the styles as well. I'm going to grab my little handy dandy rectangle here. Maybe we'll zoom in a little bit on the mobile design. I'm just going to figure out how tall roughly do I want this div to be. So it's about 282, so maybe we'll say 280 pixels. So let's say for mobile, min height is 280 pixels, and then I'm going to convert that to rems by dividing 280 pixels by 16. 16 is the base font size, so you get 17.5 rems. Now let's take another look at our website. Oh, there we go. So it did now show up. Now this is a little bit wider than mobile, of course, so maybe I'll just turn on the mobile emulator in my browser. So this looks closer to what we want in the design. Zoom out a little bit. So you can see here, we got the background going. So now we just need to add in the image of those phones. And I decided to do that in a before pseudo element with a background image. If it doesn't work, we can try something else like using an actual image tag. There's almost always more than one way of building anything. So you don't need to worry too much about finding the one perfect way, as long as it is as simple as possible and it is understandable for yourself in the future or another dev to look at the code and understand how it works. Then I think that you can choose any approach that makes the most sense to you. The image is image mockups. We'll kind of do the same thing where we're going to do the background size cover and these other background properties. The other thing we want to do is we want to do position absolute, since we're going to need to do that later on. And because this is position absolute, we have to make sure that the parent of the before pseudo element, which is the hero image selector, is position relative. Otherwise, this image is going to basically fly up out of where you want it to be. So just make sure that when you have position absolute, you make the parent a position relative to keep it sort of within the bounds of the parent. So let's just see what this looks like now. Doesn't look like anything. This is probably again because, oh, I forgot. So when you have a before or an after pseudo element, you need to give it a content property. Otherwise, it will just not even exist on the page. This is just a characteristic of using these pseudo elements. Okay, so now we can see in our inspector, the before is there. So I think what I want to do is maybe add the height. And I'm going to set height to 100% so that it will match the height of the parent. So let's save that. And what's going on? Oh, there's no width here. So when something's not showing up or doing what you want it to do, it's a really good idea to always check in your code inspector and just trying to figure out and troubleshoot what is causing the issue. So right now the issue we're looking at is why is the phone image not showing up. If we look at this before element, I can see that it has 0 width, but it does have 280 height because I set the height property. So we're also going to set the width to 100%. And we'll see how that looks. Okay, so now we got our phones. They are not quite the right size, I think. Looking at this, we want the bottom of that phone to perfectly align with the bottom of the background. And that is not what's happening here. This is the bottom of the background. And just for good measure in debugging, I often like to do this. So I'll do a temporary border, 1 pixel solid. Let's do magenta. Adding a border will sort of tweak the size of the div, but for most cases, I think it's still okay. Now we see we have a border of the hero image, and we have the background going down there. But we want the phones to end on the bottom. We don't want it to be centered like it is right now. So what we want to do is adjust the background position so it aligns from the bottom. For center, this is the center horizontally, is the first center. Second center is the vertical center. Instead of center for vertical, we're going to say we want it to position itself at the bottom. So now we can see that the image kind of ends right at the bottom of that hero image div. Now, looking back at the design, I think the phone images are a little bit, it looks like they're a little bit smaller than what we have in our website. There's just a little bit more space on left and right. So let's go and sort of adjust that a little bit. So the phone images are in the pseudo element, the before element. So how do we make this narrower? What we could do, there's a couple ways. Right now the width is 100%, so if you decrease that, it would sort of decrease. But then you have the case where it's not centered, so then you'd have to add like a margin auto. Wait, display block maybe? Oh, because it's absolute. Oh, that would be too annoying. You'd have to do left 50%, transform, translate x negative 50% to center it. That's a little bit too much, so I'm just going to delete those. The better way, I think, is to keep the width at 100%, so it's still 100% of the width of the parent, but in background size, instead of cover, cover will basically ensure that the image is going to cover the entire div. So even if it means cutting off from the sides, it'll make sure that it covers everything. And that's usually what we want for things like this, but because I want to make it a little bit smaller, so we can also use percentages in background size. So if you say 100%, it's going to, looks like pretty close to cover. Yes, just basically 100% of the div. So if we reduce that, then maybe down to 94. It's reducing the background size, but it is still centered because the width is at 100%, and then we set background position to center for the horizontal. So we'll just adjust that background size to maybe 93 for that before element. So background size, 93%. Reload for good measure. And that looks, wait, now the bottom isn't matching. Oh, I forgot to save the center bottom. Let's do that. There we go. Now, it is pretty much close to the bottom, not perfectly, but I think that's okay. We'll just sort of live with the imperfection, and then it is kind of in from the sides a little bit. So that looks pretty good. Now, the next thing we're going to look at is the copy for the hero section. So let's look at the design. And obviously it looks a little bit different than what we got here on our website. So it looks like we need to make sure the font is the right font family. Also, the color needs to be a bit different. Let's just start with this title, Next Generation Digital Banking. I believe the font family itself should be the same as some of the title fonts that we have. Let's check out our style guide just to make sure what we're doing. Okay, so the font family, we just are using public sans for everything. Weight 300 and 400. 300 is light, 400 is regular. The font still looks slightly off. Let's just check this out. It's public sans, so maybe we just need to make the font size bigger. Get this. Let's get a rectangle here. And I'm just going to try to guesstimate what size the font is. 30 pixels tall, it looks like. Font size 30 pixels. The font weight seems a lot different in the design. You know what I mean? Like, it looks a lot more thin. Seems like that's the font that we're using. And 30 pixels looks different as well. Okay, so maybe 30 pixels is right, but maybe the font weight is not correct. That's 300. What does 400 look like? Doesn't look any different. For some reason, the H1... Oh, I bet it's because the H1 tag, it's not going to show this here, but usually the browser default will set all font weights to bold. So font weight, here we go, 300. Now it looks a bit closer to the weight in the design. Going back to our hero DAS file. So in the hero text section, we'll add another selector for H1, and we'll say font weight is 300. And font family has already been chosen in the global DAS file. Everything is public sans. I'm just going to close this animations thing too. All you need to do here is the font weight of 300. And then the color is this sort of dark blue. So in our variables DAS file, it's this dark blue variable. And we'll say color dark blue. And usually what I do for headline tags is I'm going to add a line height of about 1. I'll just put it in the H1 tag. Line height 1. Usually for headline tags, title tags, you want the line height to be around 1, maybe slightly bigger. And then when you have body copy, like paragraphs where you have like longer amounts of text, then you want the line height to be a bit greater than that, like 1.3 or 1.5, depending on the design. Font size, I think I said was 30. Let's get the calculator out. 30 divided by 16 is 1.875. 1.875 rems. Much closer to what we want here. I think maybe 30 might not be big enough, actually. That's 37. Font size, 37 pixels. Going back here. Okay, that looks much closer in size. I think I need to increase the line height a little bit. Maybe 1.1, maybe 1.2. A little bit less. Let's do 1.15. Just kind of meet in the middle there. All right, so let's copy these styles over. So I think I said font size was 37 pixels, and I need to convert that. 37 divided by 16 is 2.31. We'll just round a little bit here. And then line height was, I think, 1.15. All right, and we need to center the text here. It seems like most of the content on mobile is centered. So I think maybe for now, I'll just set text align center for the entire hero section. Hero text, we can do it there. Text align center. And then we'll change it to left align for the desktop media query. There we go. So going back to the hero, let's add the selector for the paragraph in the text hero text area. And we'll say line height, and I'm not sure if this is right yet, but maybe 1.5 to start off. And it's going to be inheriting the font size of 14 pixels. Spacing looks okay. And we also need to figure out some of the spacing under the headline to the paragraph. So this is something like 24. And then under the paragraph above the button, so maybe something like 37 or 36. So 24 space under the headline, 36 space under the paragraph itself. So H1 by default will inherit the styles in the browser, which we don't necessarily want. I want to basically take out this top margin that just gets added to the headline tags. I usually try to add space between elements by adding margin to the bottom of things, not to the top. Here, headline tags. So we'll say H1, H2, H3, margin top of 0. There we go. Now when we go back here, now it's all the way up to the top. We'll add spacing in the hero text area itself, but for the margin bottom, right now it's about 30, and I think it was 24. So under the hero, margin bottom, 24 divided by 16, 1.5 rems. And then in the paragraph, we're adding a margin bottom of, I think it was 36 pixels divided by 16, 2.25 rems. Now, looks a bit closer to our design, eh? So there's space between the paragraph and the button now, which is pretty good. We need to figure out the space above the headline and to the end of the thing. So it actually looks pretty similar to 36. So 36 on the top. On the bottom, it's all the way up to 87. So I think what I want to do is, ideally, at least in my mind, you would probably want the same amount of space at the top and bottom of each section. So this space here should be the same amount of space as up to here. 85 seems like a little bit, but I think we'll do maybe 60 pixels as kind of like the wrapper. That way I can put it in a helper class, which means I can then just add the wrapper class to each section that I want to add that space. And so we kind of make our styles a little bit more consistent and a little bit simpler. All right, so I said container padding left and padding right. As you can see here, container has padding of 24 on the left and the right. So I added padding top and bottom just for the nav, and then I had added padding left and right for the container, and that is equal to 24. So let's do that first, the left and the right spacing, by adding that container class, and then we'll move on to adding the top and bottom spacing. So hero text, I think maybe. Let's just see if we can do that there. Container. And then go back to our website. So now you can see here the hero text has this space, and I didn't want to do it on the hero image because that one kind of goes to the full left and right. Let's see if I add a container, then it kind of messes up the alignment that I had going. Okay, so now I got the hero text that has padding on the left and right, which is good. Kind of matches what we have here with the image of the phone. So now I'm going to think of a way of creating that top and bottom spacing with a helper class. You know, do I want to add it to the container, or do I want to add it somewhere else? Because not everything wants to have that top and bottom padding. I'd only use the container thing in the nav. So I wonder if in the container I could add padding top and bottom of, I think I said 60. Let's think about this. If I add it to the container, that would be good for this because then it has a space on top and bottom and left and right, but then it would also take effect in the nav, and I don't want that. Let's just add it to the container and see where, you know, it kind of breaks the design. So 2.25 rems. I'll do the same thing for bottom. You might do the same thing as me, but when I'm going around for adding padding or margin, I always start from the top. Actually, right should be next. Top, right, bottom, and left is last. Let's just check on that now and see how this looks. So, going to our rules, you can see header nav. It has a padding top and bottom, which I had set previously, which is good. If we scroll down to the container, you can see that it did have the padding top and padding bottom of 2.25 rems, but that got overridden by the more specific rule of header nav. This is because using the class of header within the child nav is more specific than just the general class of container. Just curious, what if I do header container? Okay, so in that case, that would be more specific, probably because the first rule is using the class of header and then the element of nav, whereas the class of header and class of container, class is more specific than the element itself. That's why this would override the class header nav selector. So it's almost like rock, paper, scissors. Class beats element selector, but then ID selector will beat class selector. It's just something that is good to know when you're working with CSS a lot. Looks like we have our container stuff all set. Go back to our mobile view and just kind of double check on that. Things look a little better, right? We're getting more spacing added. We spacing on top and bottom, and we have this, see the buttons kind of going into the bottom padding. I believe that's because I probably need to set display inline block, because I think by default, if I don't say anything, it's just going to be, an anchor tag is going to be display inline. So making it display block will make it have to follow the rules that I've set for padding and stuff. So now you can see, having set display inline block, the button is now inside the content and not going into the padding. Wait, and that's in the header. So I might need to move the button rules out of the header SAS file just because there's places outside of the header that are using the buttons. Let's do display inline block at the top. So now this actually looks pretty good. We got our hero section for mobile. Looks like everything is good in terms of spacing. Got our button going. Looks like the hover state's not working on that. You see I have that hover state on the top. Let's see where those rules are coming from and make sure that they get applied to all buttons. So in the inspector, I'm going to select that top header button, click on the hover, and if you check this hover box, it'll sort of force the hover state so you can see which style rules are getting applied. So it looks like, yeah, the hover is part of the header CTA rules, and I want that to be applied to any button. So let's go into our header SAS file. That was under the CTA. So font size, font small. So I wonder if I need to make the font size and color in the button itself. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to, let me move this globals over here. What I want to do is I'm going to take the font size from the CTA, the header CTA button, and put it in the global button rules. Let's just do it down here. Font size, and then the color is white. It's already set there, so I don't really need that. This can also just be copied over. So I'm just going to delete this header CTA. Now all the styles that we need are going to apply to all buttons since we're saving it in the global Sass file. Let's try this again. Now we can see the hero button has that nice little hover state. You don't always have to write your styles perfectly the first time because a lot of things you just kind of figure out as you build the website. There's always going to be going back and sort of correcting things and tweaking things depending on issues that come up as you're building out this website. There's nothing at all wrong with going back and changing your work a little bit. Now that we have our mobile styles for the hero, let's add the desktop styles. Going back to our design, you can see that the hero was one column on mobile with the image first, then the text. And on desktop, it is two columns with the text on the left and the image on the right. So what we're going to do is add some flexbox to this. What I want to do is in the hero selector, add display flex to turn on flexbox. But I only want this rule to take effect for desktop widths and up. What I've done before was I created a mixins Sass file, and we have our breakpoint up mixin that I can then use to add the media query. So we'll say include breakpoint dash up, and then in the parameters the size we want to hit, we're going to focus on large and up. So then I can move this rule into the breakpoint media query. So just by adding this one rule, let's look at our website and see how that looks for desktop. Okay, so you can probably guess what's happening here. The hero image doesn't have any height, but we can see that flexbox is turned on. There we go, flex 1, and then we'll add flex 1 to the hero text as well. And this is just a start off to kind of make both of them the same amount of space. So you can see that, let's add that flex of 1 in the desktop widths to both the image and the text selectors. So we'll say flex of 1, and we'll change this later on, but we just kind of want to get things started. Now you can see that there is height because adding the flex of 1 makes the child flex element be the same height across both of the flex child elements. You notice in the design the image is on the right for the desktop, but because in the markup we added hero image first, that's why it's on the left. So that's another thing you can do in Flexbox is you can adjust the order. So we want the image to be second on desktop. I think it's flex order. No, I think it's just order. And we want it to be 2, so we want it to be second, and we want the text to be first. So order of 1. There we go. Second thing we need to do is look at the heights, because this looks like it's not quite tall enough compared to the design. So on desktop, the hero image is about, and we're not going to take into consideration this overhang here, because the section itself ends just about down here. So 655 pixels tall. So there's a couple ways we can do that. We can, of course, adjust the hero section itself to be 655 pixels tall, or we can make the image 655 pixels tall, and then we know that the text will sort of take the same height. So hero image, what happens if we say height of 655 pixels? So now we can see that it is taking up more space, which is what we want. So let's just say minimum height for desktop. And that's 655 divided by 16 to get 40. Let's just say 41 rems. Doesn't need to be perfectly exact. But going back here, so now it's taller. We do want to center the text. We want to center the content in the Flexbox, in the Flexbox parent. In the hero Flexbox parent, you can say align items, center. This will automatically vertically align everything. So now, of course, what we need to do is we need to make this hero image the height of the parent hero. We can do that by, in the desktop breakpoint, say height is 100%. So we'll take the height of the parent. Let's see. I bet it's because in Flexbox it's kind of intelligent, so it'll size things based on the content, and because the image has no content, it's really looking to the hero text element for the height. So I think actually I do need to move the height from the hero parent selector to the hero image. Let's try this. We'll just say height. Okay, so there we go. So this is a little more like what we're hoping it'll look like. I'm gonna get rid of that magenta outline. I don't really need that anymore. So we're getting there, right? Text is centered on the left. We got our image on the right. The height is pretty much what we want. Now we need to make sure that the image is correct, because if you remember, we had two different ones. Here we go. Right now it's just loading the mobile one. And get another media query, and then for the image, I'll say background intro, probably desktop. So now it's loading the desktop. So let's check on the design again. Looks like the phone sort of starts here, kind of toward the end of that blue little wavy section. So we need to move that background over a little bit so we can see the end. We'll adjust the background position because right now it's just centered. I'm just testing it in the browser. It's a little bit quicker that way. Horizontally, I really want it to start from the left side of that background image. So we'll say left, center. We'll center it vertically. So this is actually a little bit, the phone's a bit down from the top of that gray-blue section. So what happens if we do bottom? Oh, have it left top. Oh, actually, I think we can leave it left center, but what we want to do is adjust the mockup so that they're down. So we can do something like top 10% or something. Then at least it's going to be a little bit closer to being under there. And we also, looks like we want to move it over a little bit. But let's just focus on this background stuff right now and copy over the styles so that I don't forget what I did. The background position left center for desktop for hero image. Hero image, desktop, new background image, and now it's also going to have a new background position. That looks pretty good. We'll adjust how the phones are positioned over the background image after we make it the right width, because right now this is 50% and then the image is 50%, but in reality there's more width given to the images. So now what we're going to do is going to go back into our hero section SAS file, and we're going to adjust the flex child properties. The first one was image, and the image one was a wider one, so we'll set that flex of 3. Then for the text it's going to be 2. So what these numbers mean is the available space in the parent gets allotted to each child. And it's kind of like a ratio. Image is going to get 3 parts, and then the text is going to get 2 parts. Okay, so it looks a little bit closer to the design, right? So there's more space given for the image, and then a little bit less space for the text. Now I think I also need to make sure that we're using that container to have a max width set, because right now everything is just going across. So this is 1240. Oh yeah, it's going all the way across. So what I think I need to do is for the container helper class, which I already added, which is good, I'm going to have to add a max width. Let me just show you what that will look like. Max width, and I think it was 1113 pixels. And then we're going to have a margin of auto. It'll center it. So then anything with the container helper class is going to have a max width set, and then it'll be centered if the width is larger than that. Going back to our code editor, and I believe it's in our globals. So max width is going to be, I said 1113, just according to the design. Maybe we'll round it down 1110. And then turn it into rems 69.375 rems. And then margin of 0 on top and bottom, and then auto left and right. And that will center the container. Now we go back to here. So we can see the header now is centered nicely. It's limited to that 1110. And then we're going to add that container class to the hero as well. Ooh, this is going to be tricky because I used the container class in the hero text to add that padding for the mobile styles. But I think if I just add the container class to the hero itself, hopefully the padding on the left and the right should stay from mobile. Let's just go back to mobile styles and make sure that we have the spacing that we wanted here. There's 2 things we want to do. We want to control the max width to have that container, but then we also want to add padding around the sections. What we could do is I could split it out into 2 different helper classes, like a container class and then wrapper or some other generic word like that. Or I could add some modifiers to the container class where I could add padding and then add that special modifier class. Sounds pretty good. Let's try that. If you just have a container, the most important thing I want to do is to have that max width and the auto margin. Keeping in mind that there are cases that I want to only add padding to one side, or maybe I wanted to add to all sides except for the top. What if I did something like adding a modifier where it's container padding top, and then if you have that, it gets the padding top, and then I could do the same thing. There we go. So now we have the padding. But there might be cases where I want the padding all the way around. There might be cases where I just want it maybe top and bottom or just left and right. So I think I'll create maybe 2 more helper class modifiers where it's padding just top and bottom. Let's just say padding Y. That's kind of the vertical axis. And then for that, we'll add padding top and padding bottom. And then if I want padding only on the left and right, we'll say padding X for horizontal. Then we'll add padding padding right and padding left. It looks like I'm taking up a lot of space by creating these extra classes, but it'll save me time when I'm creating the markup later on, because now let me show you what I can do. For the header, I want padding all the way around. So I can say, maybe I should add one more helper class where it's P all, and then this one is going to have everything, all the options. So now, I know it says pal, we can now add container PALL to the nav, and then for the hero, we can say container PX. And see the hero container. Oh, actually, I didn't want any padding on this at all. Now it's like this. Change that. Okay, hero container. Now this is good. There's no padding here, but I need to add padding to the hero text. So what I could do there is add container, maybe padding all because it's in the text element. Here we go. Now we got container padding all. This is good too because I'm not adding the max width rule to this element. It won't hurt anything, it won't break the site, but it's just not really needed. I'm pretty happy with this. But then let's check out on desktop. We got hero container, which is fine. And then the header, if you look in the nav, it has a container max width set, and then it has the padding all the way around, which is perfect. All right, I had to adjust the lighting there because as I was recording the last video, the sun was kind of going down, so things are just getting darker and darker. But now we should be all set. So back in our hero section, I think the next thing we want to do is let's fix the hero text styles, because I think in the design it is left aligned as opposed to being centered like it is here. Let's go into our hero styles, and here we go. So text line center is what we set as the default mobile styles. That's kind of an example of mobile first styles, where your mobile styles are the default styles without any media queries, and then you add on your desktop and so on styles using a media query. See how that looks, and there we go. But I wonder if the text styles are bigger on desktop perhaps? Oh yeah, definitely bigger. I think before it was maybe 37, is that right? 37, yeah. Let's estimate what the desktop H1 font size is gonna be. 52, let's try 52. Font medium. Well, I guess we'll just add font maybe X large, just in case we need something between 18 and 52. So 52 divided by 16 is 3.25. So now for the hero text section, H1, we want to add include breakpoint up large, and font size is going to be that font X large. So there we go. So now it looks more close to the design where the line breaks at next generation, and then digital banking's on the next line. Let's just, while we're at it, double check our body copy here. So it looks like it's a little bigger on desktop as well. Let's see how big this is going to be for desktop. Like it's about maybe 20, maybe 19. Let's just say 20. Yes, font. Oh boy, medium, maybe large for 20 pixels. 20 divided by 16 is 1.25. That was for the body. It's in the global SAS file. Here we go. So font size, font small. We'll add or include breakpoint up, large. Font size, font large. Looks pretty good. Looks smaller on the design. Let's take that down to maybe, you know, let's just try 18 since I already have that variable saved. That looks pretty close to the design. I'm happy with that. Now we need to tackle the more tricky part, which is this hero image section. The problem with this is that we want the hero content to have that container, right? So the max width is set, but for the hero image, we actually want this to go outside of the container. Oh, also the image goes all the way up to the top of the header. And actually, oh my gosh, it looks like, because the header's white, but then this hero background, I thought it was white, but it actually looks like a very, very, very light gray. That's pretty subtle. Okay, so they did have that already set, which is great. So I think I can just add it to the hero selector. I'm assuming we want that for mobile as well. Background color, very light gray. Okay, so now it's very light gray. But now you can see here we have this problem where the container is limiting the width, so the gray is not going all the way out. I think I still will have to add the container class to a child of the hero container, or just of the hero rather. So it'll be something like this: class equals container. In that container, we'll move the hero image and the hero text divs. Kind of like this. Now going back into our browser, oops, I need to add the flexbox stuff. Play flex. Oh, this is a problem. So the flex styles, we want to put that in hero container. Okay, so now it looks better. Let's just double check that it looks okay on mobile. That looks okay. Okay, so we'll go back to desktop. Now we got our very light gray background color, and we need to figure out how to make this image going all the way to the right side. So I wonder if it would make sense to make this position absolute on desktop. Because if it's position absolute, then I can kind of position it and make it like right 0 or whatever. Oh gosh, got rid of the height. Height 100%? Will that fix it? No. Oh yeah, width is not working either. That's not right. Also, I think I need to add the container to have position relative. There we go. This is kind of a mess. Let me think about this again. Okay, so this looks okay. It's just the image that's not really working for us. Ooh, what if I do something like, I know I'm already storing the mockups in the before element, but what if for desktop, I put the background image SVG into the after pseudo element. So then I can absolutely position that, but then the flex styles don't get messed up. Let's try that. What have I got to lose, right? So we have this before class here, add the after. It's actually going to look quite similar to the before, so I might just copy this and then just change the actual image. So I think since I'm going to move the background image here, I'm just going to comment it out here, you know, to kind of cover my butt in case I need to go back to this. So let's try this again. Okay, we got 2 background images. As now it's loading the mobile, so what I actually need to do is background image none. Okay, so now we just have the desktop thing. Now the ZNX stuff is a little messed up. The reason the background image SVG is on top of the mockups is because the background image is in the after pseudo element, which is coming after the before pseudo element. And how CSS works is if you don't sort of designate explicitly what the ZNX is, it's going to put elements later on top of elements before. I guess I could fix this relatively easily by just switching the before and after. So this will become before, E4 will become after. And then the order doesn't really matter, but just for the sake of being more clear, I try to put the before pseudo element before the after pseudo element. Now let's see that. Okay, so now the phones are on top, which is good. So let's think about this. The background is not big enough. You can see it's much bigger in the design where it's like kind of off the page. I guess part of the problem is the width has to be bigger than the width of the parent. So what if we make the width bigger? Ooh, hey, this is looking better. Because it looks like the phones are about the right size. Let's try let's just go for 150. Width of 150, not too bad. It just seems a lot taller. The green part's going straight off the screen. We can try to fix that a little bit later. Okay, so we got this to be 150 width. Now the problem with this is that it looks like it's actually starting under the careers, bit between blog and careers. That's where the left edge of this image is. And it's also going off. So what if I do left of 20%? And this is going off the screen, which seems to be part of the design. So we'll just keep moving it off screen. The phones are a little bit down, so let's say top 5%. That's not what I want. So I think I need to do transform, translate Y. Oh, shoot. Also background size is 93%. Let's try contain. So that looks better because all the phones are visible. Was it, what, 93% first? I'll just try to maybe match the size of the design. So it's going up all the way. It's getting cut off just above that 74,000 thing. So 97% perhaps. So it's actually looking pretty okay. Let's move it a little bit to the left. That looks pretty good. And it looks like this needs to be down a little bit more. So let's translate it down. I'm not actually sure if translate is going to be the way to go for this because it's getting cut off. But the problem is I want where this gets cut off to like stick to the top. I think I'm gonna uncheck the transform because this looks pretty close to the design, right? You can see this is going right up to that top nav bar. So I think I will maybe increase the size a little bit. And then I think I just need to make the after pseudo element a little bit smaller. Let's just worry about the background image first. I kind of just want to start over. So let's reload to refresh all the styles. Okay, so let's start with just the intro desktop SVG. The problem with this was it's not big enough, right? So what I did was I increased the width to 150, which looks good. So let's put that in the code before. We'll add a little breakpoint here, include breakpoint large, width of 150%. One style saved. Now the problem is that it's not going down all the way to, like the blue in the design is going all the way down to the bottom, and this is not. Weird. Let me actually add some outlines to both of these just so you can see a little bit what I'm doing. Okay, so now I can see a little bit better, hopefully. Wait, why did that not take? Is there an error? Oh, there's an error. There is an error. Oh, no mix and name breakpoint. Okay, I was typing some wrong stuff in there. Breakpoint up. Now this magenta border should show up. There we go. You know what? I'm just going to hide this right now. I can just focus on the background thing. Okay, so this needs to move down all the way down to the bottom of that hero. Let's just do 15. Okay. If on big screens it's gonna see more, I don't want it to like get cut off. Something like this, where at least you can see that bottom edge. Okay, CSS is hard, guys. Don't let anyone tell you it's easy. Let's just add a little more space. The green is actually getting cut off, whereas on the website, it's, you know, not going all the way up. I think I'm just not making it large enough. Now I need to move it a little bit. Okay, so 0%, 83%. That actually looks pretty good. It's still a little bit taller, so... Okay, it actually is getting quite close, which is great. This looks pretty close. I'm going to copy this and we'll add it to these styles. No repeat is fine. And then background position and background size change. See, this is looking closer and closer. Now we need to just kind of position the phones. A lot of times when we're coding and building stuff, we try to just do everything at once. Like I was trying to do like the background SVG and also the phone mockup at the same time, but it's quicker in the long run for me to just focus on one thing at a time. So what I did was I focused just on that background SVG, got that, and then now I can work on positioning the phones. I think you'll be more successful doing it that way because you aren't splitting your attention between 2 different things or 3 different things, trying to figure them all out at once. It's much easier when you just separate things out and just attack one problem at a time. So now, these phones actually look pretty close. Now, of course, it's not going all the way down under here into the next section, so we do need to figure that out. Let's just get this to 100%. Or let's do contain. Oh, let me think about this. The reason that this keeps getting cut off, I was doing background size 100%, and then I was trying to do like top 5% or something to move it down, but I don't want this to get cut off, right? I think it's because the height is always going to be the same. So what if I make the height taller than the parent, which is the case, right? Because you're looking at the design, the phone starts at the top and it extends beyond. So it's like 100% plus a little more. So let's try height of 110% maybe a little bit more than that. So you can see now things are moving down, which is good. I'm really just overhanging a little bit. It's down a little bit too much. Bring that top thing back, maybe -2. But it's not going up here, so I wonder if I need to increase the background size. Yeah, so background size, let's just kind of guess here. 120 maybe. So the width also needs to be greater than the hero image div. Because remember, the hero image div is limited by the flexbox properties. That's why it's only 637, whereas this one needs to be wider and taller than the parent. So let's increase this as well. And because we're increasing the width, the size of the background image is increasing too. So we can take that down by decreasing the background size. Just a little bit of like, kind of finagle things around. So let's start trying to align this leftmost phone near that puzzle piece thing. So we'll add a left property, start with 0%, And we'll kind of increase it, and then we can see it going, oh, maybe there. Yeah, maybe a little bit less. So 22% perhaps. I think we need to move it up a little bit because it looks like the corner of this phone is just getting into that green area. So we'll move it up. Maybe that much. It's pretty close, I think. And then let's see how, if this is kind of the right look that we got here. So it's, yeah, overhanging just a little bit. Now, of course, we don't want this to go all up into the header. I think actually we don't want we want the top to always be 0. I think this looks pretty good. We do want to move this up a little bit, right? But I think we can maybe control that not with the element itself, but with the background position, because I said center bottom. If I do center 0%, and then I use that. So then what this is doing is it's adjusting the background image within that div. So if the background image goes over, it's not going to show that overlap because it's just the background image, it's not the div itself. It can be kind of tricky. The more time you spend doing this kind of stuff, the more you'll sort of understand how things work and how different properties fit together and like what they do. This looks pretty close. Background size should be a little bit more. Let's try 95, and then we'll kind of move it down as we need to. I think I can actually erase this top property because it's just 0. Let's take these properties. Oh yeah, and the width and height properties too. Make sure we copied that over and then put them into our SAS file. Oh wait, this is for just desktop. I don't want to delete the mobile styles. There we go. Okay, so we don't need this image mockups because it's the same as the mobile styles. Everything else is changing. We don't need the no repeat. Let's remove this border stuff because we don't want to be distracted by that. Now this is looking pretty close to the design, I think. If we increase the width, you can see, you know, it is going to nicely stay flush to that right edge. We have the mobile design. I think that looks pretty close to what we had. Then for tablet, it's looking a little weird, right? So I think one fix for that could be just to increase the size of the hero for tablet. Hero image. So min height is 17.5, which is 280 pixels. If you want to know how many pixels something is, if it's using another unit like rems or EMs, you can check in the computed. That'll give you the sort of resulting pixel size. So this one was min height of 280. Obviously that's not quite tall enough for tablet, so let's say min height of maybe 400 pixels. You don't want it to be too tall because you do want the whole hero to, I think, fit in the viewport when you're loading it in a tablet, but maybe just a little bit shorter. Hero image, I have the background here, and then the mockups. Ooh, this was not in a media query, loading the desktop image. That's not good. That might be why it looks slightly strange here. Okay, let's fix that first. So in the before pseudo element, I need to move this into a media query. Looks like I just put it in the default styles. Let's think about this again. So I change things where I load the mockups in the after pseudo element, and then the background images in the before pseudo element for desktop, but the background image for mobile is in the hero image element itself. So I could actually move all of these properties into desktop, I think. Actually, I don't need the width, I do need the height. Maybe I'll just comment things out in case I need to bring it back. Okay, so this still looks good on desktop, and then on mobile, it's only loading the mobile background, because before it was loading like both. Let's go back to this section, and we wanted to change that min height, right? Let's try 400 pixels, and then I wanted to try background position, maybe center top for the mockups, which is in the after. So background position, center top. I feel like center bottom was better. We'll leave it center bottom, and then we're going to make the min height 400 pixels, and we will convert that to rems. For medium, breakpoint up medium, 400 pixels divided by 16 is 25 rems. For large, it's just height of 41. So here's the thing on mobile. Here it is on tablet, and here it is on desktop. And it takes a second to load that thing on desktop. I don't know if I'm happy with this. It's too big, I think. So maybe for medium, we can do something like background size is something like this, 52%. So hero image after, background size is 52% for medium. Medium, background size 52%. So we can remove this commented out thing. Ooh, what did I do? I might have put it in the wrong property. Oh, the before pseudo element, after pseudo element is what I need for the mockups. Move that down there. This should work now. Okay, that looks closer to what we had. That is okay. Let's just tweak this tablet background image again. So I think I want to make it background position bottom. So let's try center bottom or center. Then at least it's sort of like closer to like what the mobile thing was. Center 60. So background position center 60 for hero image on medium. There we go. Okay, so I think this looks a little better, right? And it is hard because I'd say 99% of the time, if you're in any kind of design, work situation or whatever, the designer is usually only going to give you a mobile design and then a desktop design, which you can see was the case here with Front End Mentor. So for tablet, a lot of times it's kind of on you to figure out, okay, what combination of like mobile styles and desktop styles am I going to do for mobile, for tablet, I mean. This is tablet, and this is phone, and then this is magical. Okay, so that was the hero section video. I hope that you found this helpful. I know that it can be kind of confusing to work with background images as well as position absolute elements. So if you have any questions or comments, you can feel free to leave them down below. Otherwise, thanks for watching and keep on coding.